Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, talking up the LSU Tigers. The best way to do that I can think of is to bring in Matt Moscona. You can join him on ESPN Baton Rouge, New Orleans. His show, after further review, catch it 3 to 6 Central Time weekdays. Matt, how you doing this afternoon?
Mark, I'm great. I had a barbecue by the pool yesterday, and it's February. It looks like you're wearing a little quarter zip there, freezing up there in the great Northeast. So I'm fantastic.
Well, I'm going to brag about our one day at 72 last Wednesday. So we hit about 3 days above 60, and we peaked out at 72, and then about 35 the next day. But we'll be in the mid-50s this week.
We're 2 weeks running in the 80s, so we're good.
Yeah. Let's stop this conversation right now. Let's talk about football. That's supposed to be played not in the 80s, unless of course, you're in the SEC. Okay, so let's look at National Signing Day. So we had the split in regards to the early signing period, the National Signing Day that is the traditional first week of February. LSU, everybody focuses on that top 3 to 5 teams and not a whole lot of national attention toward LSU, but still by all accounts a good recruiting class.
Yeah, it was the early signing period and the traditional signing day were kind of a tale of 2 different days for LSU. So you had the early signing period and LSU did work. I mean, they got everybody that had been committed signed. And Ed Orgeron said all season that they needed to reinforce their lines, and he was going to go get JUCO linemen, and he did. He got the number 1 JUCO offensive tackle in the country. He got a top 5 JUCO offensive guard in the country. The early signing period was a great success, and all they had left was to fill a few spots on the traditional signing day, and that's where the day kind of went awry for LSU. They were hoping to get, or thinking all along, that they would get the number 1 corner in the country and Pat Surtain Jr. He instead picked Alabama after being, considered an LSU lean by his own admission his entire recruitment. Because they had to slow play that, they missed out on another cornerback, Mario Goodrich, who went to Clemson. So LSU ended up not signing a cornerback in the class, and that leaves them in a little bit of a conundrum here, Mark. They've got 12 scholarship wide receivers on the roster and 4 scholarship cornerbacks. There's a great imbalance there. So Ed Orgeron's talked a little bit about what he's going to do. One of the safeties they signed in this class, Kelvin Joseph, who's a great prospect from about 10 minutes from LSU's campus, he'll play corner instead of safety. And they're going to move one of their wide receivers, Manny Netherly, a former 4-star. They'll move him to cornerback as well to try to help with the numbers there. But that, needless to say, that's going to be one of the big positions people watch come spring. And the other thing, Mark, is they did not sign a quarterback. So they got 2 last year, but their numbers there are going to be thin. So I'd say look for LSU in this offseason, hit the grad transfer market, looking for cornerbacks and possibly a quarterback as well.
So for LSU to be short on cornerbacks, that's
odd.
That's odd. I don't know that they necessarily carry more than other teams on the roster, but it's just the quality that we all know about from recent history, of course. Matt Moscona joining us from ESPN, Baton Rouge, and New Orleans to talk up the LSU Tigers with spring practice starting on March 11th. For me, of course, we spent the last year at various times before and during and after the season, Matt talking about the other Matt Canada, but it's no longer his offense. So that became a major disappointment, and it didn't turn out to be the wizardry that we expected. Now we go to another familiar name in Steve Ensminger. Your thoughts about what he may bring to the table that may be slightly different?
It's why this spring is going to be really fascinating. Last year you could look and say, okay, it was the first spring practice not with Les Miles in more than a decade. Now, not only is it just Steve, Mark, but you have massive roster turnover on the offense. You're losing 3 starting offensive linemen. Of course, Danny Etling, your quarterback. Darius Geis and Darrell Williams were your top 2 running backs. They're gone. And your top 2 receivers of a year ago, DJ Chark and Russell Gage. So not only are they going to have a new offensive system, but they're going to have new players at basically every spot on the offense. So what they'll do and who will win jobs makes it really fascinating. I don't think there's any question that what Steve Ensminger wants to do, and he's gone on the record saying, listen, receiver is our deepest position right now. So you're going to see almost out of necessity LSU go 3 and 4 wide receiver sets predominantly because that's where they have the most talent right now and where they're most able. And assuming Miles Brennan wins the starting job at quarterback, that's the offense Miles ran at St. Stanislaus in Mississippi. They were a shotgun, spread it out, throw it 40 times a game, timing routes, catch, release, accuracy. Assuming Miles wins the job, which I am, that's what I think we're going to see from this LSU offense. How quickly can they get that engine humming with new pieces against a really tough schedule? I mean, that's what's ultimately going to make or break this offense. They'll have talent, Mark. I mean, LSU always recruits talent. That's never going to be a question. Can they get it to come together against a really tough schedule? That's the great big question facing LSU football this year.
So the good result of that could be if the offense is humming, throwing the ball all over the place, people are going to be saying, why weren't we doing this for the last 10 years?
Probably.
And then the flip side is going to be, if it doesn't work, they're going to be saying, we're LSU. We don't do this. This isn't us. This isn't what we're supposed to be.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be elements of the power run game still. I don't expect that to vanish. And Ed Ogeron is a defensive line coach, and he's a tough, rugged, old school football guy, and he's going to want that element in the offense. So I won't be surprised to see that. But the big question there, though, is who runs the ball. Nick Brossette is going to be a senior. He's a former 4-star, but he's waited his turn behind Leonard Fournette and Darius Geis and Darrell Williams. And it's like, okay, man, now's your shot. But they don't have that blue chip number 1, top 5 running back in the country ready to come in and take 20 carries a game. So that they signed a couple of running backs in this class. What their roles will be remains to be seen. But you better believe that Nick Brossette's going to get the first opportunity to go toe to mail for LSU. But how significant of an impact can he be? I don't know, Mark. I mean, he's not Leonard Fournette, but then who is? He's not Darius Geis, but he's a special talent as well. But LSU's always kind of had talented guys that can just turn around, give the ball to, and say, hey, go run really fast and make guys miss. And I think that's the hope, is that Brissett can be the next in that line.
And Matt, talking about getting the first shot, as you allude to, that's Miles Brennan. What kind of odds do you put on him getting the job? Is it like 80%? Yeah,
I would be so surprised. I won't be surprised if they have a package for Lowell Narcisse. When you look at Lowell, and for those that don't know, Lowell Narcisse and Miles Brennan signed in the same class a year ago. Lowell was coming off 2 knee injuries in high school, so he redshirted, whereas Brennan played a little bit. Lowell is your prototypical dual threat, athletic, freak show at playing quarterback. He's a lefty. He can throw the ball 80 yards in the air. He's got a cannon. He just has to kind of harness it. But when you look at Lowell Narcisse in the uniform, he looks like an NFL running back. He is impressive. And if they don't find a way to get him on the field with some packages to get him involved in the offense, that's a miss, because he's the type of guy running the football that gives you the dynamic element that maybe LSU doesn't have in its running backs right now. So yeah, to your question, I would be shocked if week 1 against Miami and Arlington, if Miles Brennan isn't out there as the starting quarterback. Likewise, I would be shocked if Lowell Narcisse doesn't play some type of role in the offense.
We've got Matt Moscona on the line. You can join him on ESPN Baton Rouge and New Orleans. The show is after further review, 3 to 6 Central Time, weekdays. So, Matt, set us up on defense, because Arden Key's the name that's missing, but based on the lack of productivity and the injuries and the issues and everything else, there's a whole slew of other guys that are going to be missing more so from that 2017 club.
It's not just Arden. You're losing 3 senior defensive linemen, Christian Lockature, Greg Gilmore, and Frank Herron. You lose a senior linebacker in Donnie Alexander, and both starting cornerbacks, Dante Jackson and Kevin Tolliver, left early for the draft. So on the defensive side of the ball, LSU's got massive turnover again. Now, I would say that they're more ready on defense to have their backups emerge. A guy last year who redshirted when he sat out a year for his transfer from Texas Tech is Braden Fajoko. And He's a defensive lineman. He started every game in 2 years at Texas Tech and then transferred, sat out last year. So he'll have 2 years left to play at LSU. But Pete Jenkins, the defensive line coach at LSU a year ago, and Dave Aranda said Fehoko was their best defensive lineman, and he didn't play. So he'll step up and be a day one starter. Rashard Lawrence at one end is a 3-4 end, is a guy who he's got first-round draft pick, all-SEC, potential All-America potential written all over him. He'll play a huge role on this team. And then LSU has recruited some big dudes to be the 3-4 nose, and you're just going to see new names. You're going to see guys like Ed Alexander rotate there at the nose. Glenn Logan's going to get some playing time. They've got dudes. A guy who was the number one player in Louisiana coming out in the class of 2017 who was academically ineligible. He'll be ready to go this year as a nose tackle. So they got bodies, and they got really talented ones. It's just a matter of guys who haven't been asked to do it in games yet stepping up and doing it. But the defense is going to have a whole bunch of talent on that side of the ball for Dave Aranda to mix and match and to play with.
For the past 5 years, Alabama's the standard, not just in the division, obviously in college football. Auburn and LSU kind of place in that second tier, regardless of the current standings in that particular year. Just generally, it's Auburn, it's LSU, then it's kind of everybody else, and Mississippi jumps up. Hugh Freeze had a couple good years, obviously, for certain reasons, and then Texas A&M, obviously, Kevin Sumlin, we thought he had something going. But did anybody Baton Rouge take notice when Jimbo Fisher was hired at Texas A&M?
Oh, it was a huge story here, especially considering LSU had flirtations with Jimbo in 2 off seasons. So, absolutely, that was a big story. Not only that, but then Jimbo also made a run at Dave Aranda to try to lure him as his defensive coordinator there to College Station. Of course, Dave decided to stay at LSU for $2.5 million reasons, which I don't blame him. But yeah, and I think that's one of the really interesting factors that could change the landscape in the Southeastern Conference right now. Mark, consider LSU's never, since A&M's been in the league, LSU's never lost to A&M. It's the only team that A&M has played they haven't beaten. That's a matchup that, for whatever reason, has really favored LSU. So now you bring in Jimbo Fisher. He brings Mike Elko in to be his defensive coordinator from Notre Dame. Kevin Sumlin, for all of his flaws, recruited really well. I just think Jimbo is going to bring quarterback development and a level of toughness that's going to make A&M a thorn in everybody's side. That's one of those schools, Mark, that there's no reason for A&M ever to not be great. They've just got too many resources. When you can go drop $500 million to renovate your stadium and spend $75 million on a coach. There's everything there. You're in the state of Texas. There's everything there for A&M to be great. And it's quite honestly puzzling why they've gone through these long stretches of irrelevance. But I think they got their guy, and it certainly got a lot of attention here as it did all over college football.
Yeah, and you separated it from Nebraska. So Nebraska is willing to do all that. They love football just as much. They've got all this money, but they're sitting in Nebraska. They don't have football players just on every street corner all over the place, 4 and 5 stars, but Texas A&M certainly has that. And when you talk about what's the reason why LSU has dominated this series, so let's see, 2012 was Johnny Manziel's first year, so I think it's been 6 straight. It's basically because I know that the matchups that I see is that LSU is certainly willing to just pound away, and Texas A&M doesn't seem to be a whole lot interested in tackling guys on defense. So
that's a big part of it, but also LSU's defense. I mean, those games against Johnny Manziel, LSU schemed beautifully to just sort of create a 3-man rush and keep Manziel in that pocket, and they were athletic enough in the defensive front to not allow him to beat them with his feet. And it really hasn't mattered. Whatever Sumlin's tried, LSU's had the answer defensively against Texas A&M. So it'll be very interesting to see if Jimbo, who wants to run a more pro-style type of offense, if he's able to do that, and if so, how quickly he's able to do that with the personnel he has.
All right, March 11th is the first day of LSU spring camp. Hopefully we can have you back, Matt, a few weeks into it when we've got some news out of camp.
Would love to do it, Mark. Always appreciate you having me on.